All right. Thank you so much for everybody being here. It is a little after 6:30. We're calling to order the meeting. And we're going to be having announcement, public forum, and introductions of the steering committee. We'll go in that order as the start process. I'm going to go with the introduction first, and then we're going to go to the announcement and then public forum thereafter. And then also share news and events and questions and concerns that folks may have. My name is Romeo. I am a member of the steering committee. I have here Nancy with me as well, who will be introducing herself shortly. And I also serve on the Church Street Marketplace Commission. I work for Green Mountain Transit as my regular daytime job at the bus station. So it's a very lively place. I hope you guys visit there someday. Besides that, I'm glad to be here, and we'll go with Nancy.
I'm Nancy Harkins, and I think online, do we have Anita?
No.
No, okay. Anita will hopefully be joining us online shortly also from the steering committee. Two of our other steering committee members, Mills Forney and Dallas Area, could not be here tonight. So I think we want to hear from Greg.
Correct. Yes. So go ahead, Craig, I believe.
Okay. Let's make a quick announcement.
Yeah. Yeah. So as part of the announcement, yes.
Just for fun. Hey, I'm Nick Anderson from Champlain College. Just quick update. If the building's on fire, run straight out that way. If you want to go to the bathroom, take a right and go around the corner, and there's a couple of single-use bathrooms down the end. Enjoy.
Thank you. Before we do that, we're just going to do a quick introduction of everybody, and then we're going to move on to you thereafter. So if you can announce yourself.
I'm Joel Hacken from 352 South Winooski.
Yep.
Cindy Hacken from 352 South Winooski.
Mary Twitchell from Ward 6, Redstone Terrace.
Keep that.
Right there.
And you don't have to get those near your mouth. You can hold them way down.
I'm Greg Upperwood, Ward 6.
Hi, I'm Megan Upperwood from Ward 6 on South Winooski. I am Gator, Ward 6. I live near the Ward.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Yes, I am Sarah Hernandez-Tim. I am the Public Information and Community Engagement Officer with the Burlington Police Department.
My name is Bram Klepner. I live at 469 South Willard Street and am a representative elect to the State House from this district.
Thank you.
Jim Brown. I live on Clymer Street in Ward 6.
Jeff Blumley from Ward 5, representative elect. Well, for our district, our shared district.
Congratulations. And we do have some folks, including one of our counselors, I believe, online. If you can introduce yourselves, that'd be great. Anybody online, if you can introduce yourself?
Hi, it's Becca. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, this format is different than I'm used to. I am Becca Brown McKnight. I am the city councilor for Ward 6. And I think that's it. I live in Ward 6.
Thank you, counselor. Who else do we have online right now?
Anita?
Yeah, I'm Anita Rapone and I live in Ward 6 and I'm on the steering committee.
Thank you, Anita.
Okay.
All right. Do we have anybody else before we move on?
Well, Mary Gay just.
Mary, go ahead if you can, and unmute yourself.
That was a mistake. I didn't mean to be speaking.
Okay, just as introduction, that's all. Okay, we're gonna move on to announcements and then thereafter public forum. We have our clerk here as well. Please go ahead and share with us if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yes, we hearing? Is it this one working? It looks green. Okay. Yeah, hi. Greg Uplerwood, as I said, and I'm ward clerk, and as such, I manage the the election polling place, Edmonds Gym. And just a few words. First of all, it went very well. We had a very big turnout, and I have a few statistics to speak to. And I think one of the gratifying and happy things that we saw were the number of new registrants, people, new voters, and many of them, I would venture to guess, were UVM students from District 14. Since redistricting, we've collected a lot more dormitories, student habitations, and there was a big campaign at UVM to get out the vote, and that was obviously very successful. We normally in usual elections, not presidential elections, we have like one person sitting at a desk doing same day registrations. This time we had 3 people, and even with 3 people, there were lines of people trying to register. And as a matter of fact, Sarah Montgomery, the person in City Hall the clerk's office takes care of elections. She said that District 14 had 113 checklist additions. Now, that includes people who were from other wards who in redistricting came on, but also the first-time voters, the new registrants, and again, mostly UVM students. We have 3 districts in Ward 6. District 16, which is mostly downtown, we only have like 1 square block. And so there are very, very few people who live in our ward who are in District 16. District 14 is the one I just mentioned, covers a lot of the northern part of Ward 6. And the numbers of votes cast in our ward, District 16, we had 44 votes cast. District 14, we had 748 votes cast. And District 13, which is really basically all of Ward 6, we had 1,682 votes cast. So that adds up to 2,474 votes. And I believe that is maybe 200 more than were cast in this ward in the 2020 presidential election. I'm not quite exactly sure of that, but I was hoping Alan Matson might be here because he has the exact figure. And I, you might be curious, just as one example of the votes cast in our ward, and now these are all district votes, and that is the following figures I'm going to give you are for the entire districts, and not all of these are in our ward. So District 13, which is mostly in our ward, we had, District 13 entirely, even outside our ward, 4,885 votes were cast. And Governor Scott had 52% of the vote, and Charleston had 41%. In District 14, 1,789 votes were cast. Scott had 37% and Charleston had 50%. In District 16, which is mostly downtown the old North End, 3,589 votes were cast. Scott had 37% and Charleston had 52%. So that's just one example. It gives you a little idea of how the votes were cast in the district, in the city. Overall, the city, Scott 49%, Charleston 42%. I'm not going to go on. I just picked one race, and that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to mention a couple of meetings that are meetings and events. Not to steal thunder from the legislators, but they will be hosting a Zoom cafe on housing on Sunday, November 17th at 7 p.m. And you can find information about that in Front Porch Forum to register online. Thank you. And the second event I wanted to mention is a week from Saturday, the 16th, at 11 o'clock, there will be another wastewater treatment plant tour. Several of us have attended this tour, and I really encourage anybody to take time to go and see it. It's not only is it very interesting, but we are going to have a bond issue next year on refurbishing the waste treatment plant. So it's really important to know what's going on down there. Yes, Becca.
Hi, just two quick, one question and one announcement. If it's okay, can I ask Greg? I just wanted to share the feedback that I heard from a constituent that observed some very difficult entry into the Ward 6 polling place from a person who was in, a few people who were in wheelchairs. And obviously I know that's outside of your personal purview, but I wonder if you might know someone to connect counselors or someone in the city with to help address that issue, because she really described it in detail, and it was really just not right, not the experience that we want for our voters. So maybe you and I can check in offline about that, but I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, sure. I am responsible for that, and I do have responses to that. So
Okay,
sure.
great. Yeah, if maybe there are already resources in place and we just have to have better signs or something like that. So thank you for that. And then I do have one announcement. We are hosting, Councillor Shannon, I think, is in the room there. It's hard to see who's there, but we are hosting oh, good. We're hosting an event next week. It is called Women in Politics, and it is an event to encourage community building and confidence building, and just get to know you sort of mixer for anyone who's interested in being more involved or supporting or just having any role in city government or in school administration in any way. And that will be from 6 to 8 at Hula. And we have the Secretary of State, Sarah Copeland-Hansis, and House Speaker Jill Korinsky, and many other women in politics. So everyone should have seen an invitation on your Front Porch Forum or in your email or directly from me. Tiff, I'm thinking of you. I think I sent it directly to you. And so just wanted to mention that. Hope to have some of you there.
Thank you, Counselor. Sarah, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, again. My name is Sarah Hernandez-Tim. I'm the Public Information and Community Engagement Officer with the Burlington Police Department. I am happy to announce that the BPD will be hosting our annual Community Academy starting in the new year. The Academy is a great way to learn about the BPD from our officers as well as our professional staff. The event will take place each Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., starting January 8th through February 12th. I have some flyers here with me today, as well as on the table right here with more information, including the application materials. The deadline to apply is December 13th. And I also wanted to take this opportunity that in addition to the Community Academy, the BPD is open to hearing from each ward on ways where our officers can best engage with your neighborhoods. If there's an event or a community gathering that you would like us to be present or a part of, we would love to hear from you, and especially just to meet you where you're at. So you're welcome to reach out to me directly or through your steering committee, and my contact information is on the flyer. Thank you.
Any additional announcements or comments?
Well, I have pages of
Okay.
stuff, but I'll get my turn.
Yes. All right. And we're gonna move on to Fletcher Free Library.
That's me.
Okay.
Do you want to come up here?
I can, sure, up at the end here, I'll head on over.
There's an extra seat.
All right, perfect.
I also can move over.
Oh, okay.
Whichever is-
In the middle.
Please, very well.
Well, it's our fault.
Good deal, or should I jump with them?
Oh, no, that's fine. Oh,
You're good, too?
microphone's good for everybody. Okay. Watch your head.
I'm so sorry.
One's in the chair.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. My name is Peter Berghoff. I am the, I just started in my position, so I had to write it down. I'm the Technical Services and Digital Content Manager at Fletcher Free. Found out today I was coming down here to meet you all, so I'm really excited. While I'm here to represent the library, I'm also excited because I live in Ward 6. I'm down on South Winooski, so it's a two birds with one stone kind of event, so thanks. Yeah, just wanted to give you a rundown on everything that your library offers and invite anyone who doesn't already have a card to come down for a library card. Champlain College and UVM students only need their student ID. Anybody else can come in with proof of address, and we can usually make it work. If you have any questions about that, just give us a call or stop by and let us know. I'm going to start with some other physical resources that we have available. We're still getting tons and tons of awesome books in, and our excellent staff does a really good job of picking things out and also reacting to material requests when they come up. So let us know if there's something you're looking for that you don't see on our shelves. We have the books, DVDs. We have our library of things, which is all over the place and a lot of really cool, helpful day-to-day objects. And we also have our tool library, which is a lot of snow shovels, various yard tools that you might not want to buy or might want to try out or just be in a pinch and need an extra. We also have lots of digital resources, and that's where I come in. Also available with your library card. First, I'm going to name some that you can use on your phone or your personal devices. Libby is amazing. Ebooks and audiobooks available, and we are freshly trying to be even more responsive there with fielding requests if you don't see what you're looking for there. It's a work in progress and kind of my baby right now. Canopy is also wonderful, which is streaming DVDs, streaming movies, TV shows. Biblio is a new video streaming service, and Blackstone Audio is another audiobook specific streaming platform. All of these are available as apps for Roku's, phones, whatever you happen to have. You'll just need your library card and sometimes a PIN number. And if you call our tech desk, we can always help you with that. So we also have a couple other ones that are only available for use in the library on our computers, but we have Candid, which is a, I believe, international database of grants and foundations that is pretty new to the library, but very useful, very cool resource. Ancestry.com is a great one that I have fun with from time to time and use a lot helping patrons, as well as Consumer Reports and other magazines. New York Times subscriptions are available with your card as well. So we also have a lot of book clubs happening every week downtown at our main location, also at the New North End. If you get that way sometimes or need to get out of town, out of the neighborhood. Tech support drop in at both the New North End and downtown. Tech support here at Fletcher Free Main is Saturday mornings, I believe, from 11 to 12. And that's all on our website as well. And that's help with whatever devices or laptops you might come in with. I mentioned our book clubs and all of our wonderful youth programming happens all throughout the week. Check out our schedule. And next weekend, I wanted to bring attention to the Nonfiction Book Festival, which I've been told is the biggest nonfiction, graphic novel rather, festival. Important component, but very cool. Lots of stuff for sale, lots of interesting people around, lots of authors and artists, and opportunities to explore that world.
So can I get you to just that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. This way. I am winding down there. Sorry, I kind of raced through. I didn't think I had too much time, but does anybody have any questions about using the library, access issues, or anything you'd like to know? Yeah. Hats. Which ones are the hats? I don't know. Was that, were they giving them away for a while? Oh, okay. Oh, that we do. We have some really cool merchandise provided by our friends at the library board. Yeah, I've been thinking about getting one myself, but yeah, some mugs, pens, stickers. Always love the support too. Yes.
Okay. So recently you've had a couple community conversations with guest speakers.
Yes.
Was that only so one was Robert Putnam and the other was a Ms. McCade?
Yeah.
Okay. Will those continue or was that just pre the elections?
You know, I don't believe that was specifically just pre-elections. Those came up kind of fast too. For me, they weren't on my radar right away, quite honestly. But keep an eye on our website. If you want to contact Barbara, yes, on our staff listing, she can always answer more questions about that. But those were not, to my knowledge, pre-election specific. No.
We had some more ideas.
Okay, well, that's great. And I'm sure she's very responsive to email, more so than phone.
For maybe about 15 years, I've had the idea or the wish that we could slash the front of the original Carnegie Library building with some light.
Oh, sure.
Very light, not, and because LEDs now, it's not that expensive.
Yeah.
And I'd like to pursue that with someone.
I bet that would be a Director Mary Danko question, or Emer, the assistant director. I know they've entered. I've heard similar ideas brought up in meetings before. I don't know what the final word was on it, but I'll jot that down too and bring it up at our next leadership meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional questions for our friends at the library?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.
Very, very much appreciated. Thanks for the opportunity tonight too. Yeah. Thanks. I'm glad I made it. We got a little lost, but I made some friends.
Hope you come back
Yeah, I'm going to request that I do, I think. Hopefully I'll.
as a resident.
Well, regardless, yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Make my way back.
All right, folks, we're going to move on to a little bit ahead of time, but we're going to move on to our next segment. We have our two counselors. We have our district counselor, Joan Shannon, who's kindly here. We do appreciate that. And then we're going to go next to Councilor Brown McKnight, but we'll get started with our district counselor, Joan Shannon. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have something to hand out. I think I have about 20 copies, which maybe is just about what we have in the room. And I was going to go over some of the charter changes and ordinances that are currently being proposed. And Becca, there's a couple of these. I'm not exactly sure what their status is, so feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. The residential rental notice requirements. This would be a charter change. I believe it's currently in the charter change committee, and it would currently the notice requirements. Many years ago, we changed the notice requirements from like 30 days to 60 days or 90 days. And that went to the legislature for approval. But what we're requesting now is the authority to make it whatever we want without having to go to the legislature, that we can set that by ordinance. So we can, recognize that currently it's extraordinarily hard to find new housing. And we could say, you have to have 1 year notice for termination, or you have to have 1 year notice for an increase in rent. And then when hopefully we get to a time when things aren't so tight, and then we can change it to, if we have a 5% vacancy, then, 30 to 60 days notice is probably fine. But it allows us to be more nimble and responsive to the market. So that is under discussion by the Charter Change Committee right now. The second item, actually, you had on your agenda Sarah Carpenter to talk about this charter change, and she's not here, so I'm just going to talk about it as part of my regular thing. That's okay. Voter approval of local redistricting. So during my tenure on the council, we have redistricted twice. And I will say it is among the most miserable things I do as a city councilor. It is awful. It is awful from a counselor perspective. And it turns out all of you are very married to this NPA and this ward. And we get told that we must change the boundaries. And as long as nobody in this room gets their boundary changed, we're all fine. And then the legislature says that we're supposed to consider incumbency. So fortunately, we haven't had a lot of situations where we are talking about, redistricting, that a counselor lives on the line and would be redistricted out, but that becomes, a political football. Figuring out how to gerrymander things just right for the Republicans, that doesn't happen. But partisan politics are part of it. Neighborhood identities are part of it. Nobody seems to ever be happy. And it takes a very long time. Everybody has an opinion about the process, which is endless. So once we get it done, it still has to go to the legislature. And I'm guessing legislators in the rooms, you are loath to change whatever it is we finally found 7 votes to agree to.
Oh, there are people who will have a problem with it just because it's Burlington.
I think that our redistricting, I think our redistricting has not received a tremendous amount of debate. Am I wrong? Redistricting for Burlington, for city council. City council.
I don't know. I just know, I'm sorry. I just know that there are a number of chart. That would be, it is on. There are a number of charter changes that we've been asked to review, and they really are very specific to localities, and yet there are a couple people. So
I think the redistricting has been something that
it may not have been.
Because it's so localized, they really don't even know. They might disagree with it if they knew more, but they don't really know enough until you're going street by street and house by house. And do we draw the line in the middle of the street or in the back of the yards? And so what this does is says the legislature gives us the authority to redistrict. So one thing to keep in mind is that gives us there's often much debate about how many wards or how many districts we have. That gives us the authority to make more wards, to make fewer wards, to have at-large districts. And the legislature is one more opportunity for public process. So I would say kind of on the, as you're considering this, it's from my perspective, it's quite a long process and it's very hard somebody will be unhappy. I can promise you that. Going to the legislature, I don't think the legislature has any particular expertise that we lack in our local community to make this decision good or bad. But it is, one more opportunity for public process that would be eliminated. And it would all be done at the local level if this charter change were to pass and be approved by the legislature. So that's the voter approval of local redistricting.
One good example
of the misery of it all?
Yeah, very, very quick. Yeah, as a ward clerk, this election we encountered, one major problem, and that is a lot of people just didn't realize they were in District 14 and not 13 anymore. And so there was a lot of confusion on the floor, people going back and forth from desk to desk. That's one issue. And the other issue when the redistricting happened is that we have 1 square block of District 16 in Ward 6. 1 square block, and has like 44 people living in it. So that means it almost meant an extra tabulator, but then we have 3 districts to deal with. And this happens in other wards in the city as well. So.
Yes, there certainly could be some wisdom in aligning all of these different wards and districts and coordinating, but despite the legislature's authority over us now, that's that has not happened, and they just redistricted and we just redistricted. So it's unfortunately not one of the benefits we're getting out of the current system, and I don't expect we'll get it out of the new one either. But I agree. Yes, that's a problem. The next item is we just got our council packets today, and this was an item I hadn't seen. Change police and fire tax line items on your tax bills to a public safety tax line item. So currently we have language that says, we will appropriate for the police department certain amount, and that's not funds that can be used by the general fund, by public works. It can't be used by parks. Same goes with the fire department. And this would change it so that that line item would be available to be used for police, fire, other public safety needs as reasonably determined by the city council, including building code enforcement, public and behavioral health, community justice, victims services, social services, and services to reduce recidivism. So currently those things are not being funded by this line item. They're being funded by other mechanisms. So I was surprised by that. That's all I know is what I saw before us. And the recommendation on that is to refer it to the Charter Change Committee. It's not for adoption on Monday, so there will be further discussion on that. And then I think there was no sponsor, and all resolutions require a sponsor. So I think it was brought forward by the administration. The mayor. Yeah. The last thing I wanted to mention was an ordinance change proposal. Both Councillor McKnight and I are on the ordinance committee, so you're well represented on that committee. And there was an item referred to us to increase penalties for graffiti and defacement of property when it's a hate crime, to provide a hate crime enhancement for graffiti and defacement of property. What we did actually went a lot further than that and created not only a hate crime enhancement, but the ability for a private right of action. And what we brought forward initially, I asked for a review by the ACLU, and the ACLU gave us a review, and they did not feel that it met their standards, and they had a lot of specificity about what they objected to. We had our city attorney review that, and they made some changes based on that. They weren't responsive to every point that the ACLU made, but they were responsive to some of it. I am not a lawyer, and it's a little hard for me to decipher, honestly, if we have crossed a line in terms of civil rights or if we have not. Our city attorneys say we have not. This has been kind of controversial, though, and I invite your input. We warned a public hearing at our last meeting, and so this is the second hearing on Monday, and we will adopt or amend it or postpone it on Monday, but it is scheduled for us to adopt it on Monday. So one of the things, the way in which we went a lot further was that this doesn't only apply to things that, to graffiti or defacement that may be attributable as a hate crime. And it's important, one of ACLU's points is hate speech is protected speech. But it also extends to all of our other ordinances. And so that is why I listed the existing ordinances. So this section, so that you would be a little bit grounded in the section that's being changed. Our criminal offenses, our civil offenses, ticket violations. So this could get into the area of code violations. And it gives private parties, right now, the city is the one who can, ticket somebody for graffiti, but this allows for a private right of action. So you could have neighbors who feel that they are aggrieved based on protected status. And probably the vast majority, if not all of us in this room, are members of a protected class, because you can't discriminate based on age, sex, sexual orientation, family status, all religion, so many different things. Everybody has some identity. So it's very, very, very broad. So I invite you to give that, I've given you the language here, give it a closer look. Feel free to weigh in if you have opinions about that. I don't know if Becca-
I don't see age in this.
Versus race, color, religion.
Can I pipe in?
Yes, please. Yes. Yes, Counselor, go ahead.
So quickly, just a quick sort of double click on what Counselor Shannon just said about who falls under these. Every human being has, this list that's in here applies to every single person, because everybody has a gender, even if you're gender nonconforming or you're non-binary, that's a gender identity. Everyone has a race, everyone has an age. So everyone has some of these. So I think what Counselor Shannon was getting at is that, there are a lot of protected classes that could potentially take illegal action based on what they may perceive as a hateful act. So I agree. I think, I've been in a similar boat, not having a legal degree myself, and have been asking some of these same questions about whether, do we go too broad with this? And the city attorney's office has had good answers to those questions. And I feel like I'm in this situation where I just need to trust their response. And, if we somehow see this open up a can of worms, I think we'll have to go back and update it. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. I also think the context of this is important. We did start looking at this, although this rule by law has to be applied equally to all forms of, hate-based graffiti. It was kind of brought up in response to a spate of anti-transgender graffiti and stickering. And to me, this is an important way to make it clear that that type of behavior is unacceptable in Burlington. And I feel that, especially given the events of this week, we are in a moment where we need to make that even clearer than we ever have before. And so I think I just wanted to share that for me, that's a large piece of why I support this change.
And I think that there's, just to kind of clarify, to use graffiti as the example, graffiti is illegal. So we start with that baseline. And we got into trouble because we, the city of Burlington, ticketed people who were stickering, putting graffiti and defacement in the same category. We ticketed people who were defacing property with anti-transgender messaging. And the ACLU stepped in and said, well, you can't just, you haven't enforced this anywhere on anyone, and you can't only enforce this when you don't like the message. And so there is some feeling like we want to crack down on graffiti because it's a problem no matter the message. It's a problem anywhere in the city. This does nothing on that front. It does nothing to address graffiti and stickering and defacement broadly. it gives an enhancement and it allows this private right of action if you are personally aggrieved, with the concept being that there is a community-wide injustice in certain messaging.
That's how you're getting around the hate messaging problem.
Yes. So again, not being an attorney, I appreciate the sentiment and what we're trying to accomplish, but yeah, Diane.
Not being able to read all of this while you're presenting it, my question goes to any violation of any provision of this code, and so I'm not quite clear what the reference to which code that interferes with the public right, including air, noise, and water pollution, damage to public property, and so forth. That to me includes sound impact of the F-35s. How does we're impacted publicly by the noise pollution of F-35s, and we have a noise ordinance in Burlington. Does this address, am I wrong in reading that into this? Maybe that's my question.
It wasn't part of our discussion when we talk about property within the city founded and maintained. And the thing about the F-35, we do have a noise ordinance.
It doesn't cover
It doesn't, and the other issue is you can't sue the federal government, and there's a lot of reasons why the F-35 doesn't get wrapped into city ordinances. But this would apply kind of if somebody were playing some music that somebody else found offensive based on their, maybe they're playing music and there's N-word in the music, and the neighbor finds this offensive. That's the kind of thing. Now you have a noise violation because they're playing the music too loud, but do you also have the hate-based thing because it gets tied into that identity?
That's helpful. Leave it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, I think that the idea that we could shape it over time to cover things that are not covered by, especially the noise ordinance, is very interesting, because the noise, Greg himself worked a lot with Karen on that. And so I just know how limited that is and how much noisier the cities become. So I'm just interested in seeing the F-35, I agree, but I know why we can't do anything about that in this particular ordinance change proposal. But if there's more that we could do as input as a community member that's really watched the noise level, and I tend to use my decibel reader a lot just to see what's going on, even with what would be permitted now can be very noisy a lot. So we might want another review of our noise ordinance. That's just something, it's a relevant remark.
Go ahead, Will. I have a question about the first one. So if anyone else wants to ask about
Closer to the mic, Will, please.
Can I just take this one? Yeah. I had a question about the residential notice, so I just want to say if anyone else want to keep talking about the violations, I'd be happy to wait. Okay. Thanks, Councilor Shannon. I really appreciate the sentiment of the residential notice requirement ordinance, but I wonder whether it goes far enough to address some of the critical protections that myself and other young and other working people that rent apartments in the city really need to actually stay here. like, it's really on the line whether I can keep living here or not, which is pretty tough for me and a lot of people like me. In two particular areas, one being right of first refusal for tenants on sale of apartments and right of first refusal for tenant cooperatives, which was a bill that was in the legislature past session, I believe previous one as well. And the other one being fixing by ordinance a maximum rent increase tied to the consumer price index, which I know was something that the mayor had discussed during her campaign. So I guess my question is, what is the debate around this like in terms of, putting some real teeth into this? And if, what would be the best way for us to address that? And I realize, it'd be tough to get anything like this through the legislature, as it was with just cause eviction, but I think it's really important that we do to hold the legislature accountable and to make them commit to not having these protections for tenants. So I guess that's my question. Where is this at in terms of putting those real solid protections in? It's not that I don't think the notice is a good idea. I just think that, we deserve some more stability given how aggressive the marketplace for housing is, and that these measures have seen some great success in other communities.
So those are great questions. On the condo, I think you're talking about like condo conversion, the ability to buy your apartment if it goes up for sale.
Well,
Or
yeah.
you're talking about the whole, right of first refusal on the entire building, should the building go for sale?
Well, I mean, based on the bill that was in the legislation last session, I think that both situations you're describing would apply.
So we do have a condo conversion ordinance coming through that I probably should have put on here, and I don't have it in front of me. Is it on our agenda, Becca, for Thursday?
No.
Okay. But that, I believe we did include in that, right of first refusal and a long warning period so that a tenant could potentially buy their unit. But this is envisioned a little bit more, this is kind of step one of a two-step process. One is to give the city the authority to regulate these things. And secondly, the discussion on this did start out with, if you're going to raise the rent more than X, you should have to give more notice. And so that number could be established by ordinance. So, if you're only raising the rent by the consumer price index, or you're only raising the rent to cover the tax increase that we got, it seems reasonable that you would have a shorter notice on that than if you're raising the rent to whatever the market will bear, which can be really dramatic on tenants. And maybe on that, it's a much longer notice period. So it gives us more control over that. It doesn't address all of the issues. There are lots of issues with housing for sure, and this isn't getting at all of them, just is covering this one particular part about this.
So which committee is this located in right now?
This is in the Charter Change Committee. Right?
Okay, that's actually all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of brief things. So first of all, to build on Councillor Shannon's comment about how this is not the only, this is one small thing. Will, to answer your question, this is one step. And I think a big reason we're taking this particular step is that we feel confident that we can get this done. It's not super controversial, but it does have a nice positive impact on that renters, I think, will feel pretty, quickly, in air quotes, because of course we'd have to wait until the legislature takes this up. And so that's how I'm seeing this, is like, you're absolutely right. There's a lot more we need to do, but this, I think, got on the list first because it's doable, frankly. And then just be very clear, the point of, doing step one is to make the notice requirement longer, and also, as Councillor Shannon said, to tie longer notice requirements to higher rent increases. So that's not written anywhere in here, but that's what's planned once we hopefully get this passed. So I just wanted to really clarify that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
Representative, you wanted to say something?
Me? No.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just have a question out of my ignorance of process in the council. Is there like 3 readings? Is this for a final vote? And then maybe tabled if the discussion is, more discussion is necessary? How does it work?
Check out the residential rental notice or the ordinance.
The ordinance change.
So the ordinance has 2 public hearings. So we had the first public hearing last Monday. Not this week, October 28th. And then the second public hearing will be this coming Monday. And after the second public hearing, we can adopt it. So that means in the same night. So the expectation right now is that we adopt it. I think that there could be an argument that we'd like a little more information, or maybe we want the ACLU to weigh in on this draft because they have not weighed in on this draft. If there's concern about it, this is the time to voice that concern, and we could amend it. We could, postpone it to another meeting. We could send it back to committee, depending on what the public input is, there's an opportunity to do different things.
Meg McGovern. So you're saying that this is a change, but does this mean we're actually going to go after people that are, go after people that are doing graffiti, hate graffiti? Because
No.
So it's just to have it on the books.
We asked the administration for an enforcement plan to go along with this, which I have not seen that yet.
And then
Councilor Brown McKnight, have you seen?
This reminded me to send a reminder email about that, which I just did. We were told we would have it by the meeting on Tuesday. So I think I was hoping to have that by today so that we could give you some more context, because we did specifically ask for that because, as Councilor Shannon mentioned, there, if we don't change what we're enforcing, there's not going to be any change with this ordinance.
And to be honest, it really reminds me of the speed limit change. If we just reduced it to 20, but we're not pulling anybody over when they're speeding, I just feel like this is kind of silly.
Well, there is the private right of action.
So that's what I was going to say. So then that a church that is being graffitied constantly and saying that that's offensive to their religion.
Well, I think there's a private right of action, even if, it's not a hate crime. I think you can still bring
so that's my question. So it's basically giving private citizens and building owners or property managers the right to go after people that they're caught graffitiing the building.
Yes.
Which I completely support. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the counselors or comments?
Get back. Councilor Brown McKnight, did you have any updates?
I just had one, three short things to add, which I will be very fast. So one additional thing that's on our agenda for, and apologies if you hear the recorder playing in the background. We're learning the recorder in our house. We are making an update to our vacant building ordinance, which we're taking up for the first time at the council meeting next Tuesday. We are upping the penalties for vacant buildings that are out of compliance. So think about some of the, when I think of those buildings, I think of mostly a few bad ones that are located on up and down Pearl Street. So it will allow us to charge essentially what I see as negligent landlords who are not being good community members and upkeeping their buildings around town. We'll be able to charge them significantly more for those violations, which will hopefully encourage them to do something about it. So I'm excited to take that up, and we'll be that's the first step on Tuesday, and then this will come back for a vote at a future meeting. Next, we're also working on several initiatives to get support for businesses downtown and help increase security during the holiday shopping season, which I think you will see at a future council meeting probably within the next month or so. And then, as Councilor Shannon mentioned, we also made some edits to our condo conversion ordinance with the goal of making home ownership more accessible to more people in Burlington while simultaneously protecting the renters that may live in a building that may get converted to condos. So we kind of approached that one from both sides. So you'll see more about those, but I'd just like you to know what's coming down the pike here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Brown McKnight. I did have another question. I know at your meeting on the 28th, your last meeting, there was a discussion, a presentation from the administration about Modern Gov. Is that the correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And recommendations, actions that are going to be taken from that. What is the best way? How would you advise us in becoming informed and following that? And what's the timeline for implementation?
That's a really
And explain what it is.
Right at that end.
Well, we got, I'll explain it as best as I can explain it. So the prior administration, the Weinberger administration, had contracted an efficiency study that was supposed to help us guide. We knew, last year that we knew that this was going to be a difficult budget year. And I will say again, there was never a budget deficit. We never at any point in time spent more money than what we had. But every single year for my entire council career, there's always a budget gap that we, if you want all of the same things, they're going to cost more next year. And we probably don't have the growth in our grand list to cover that increased cost. So where are we going to get the money? And that's a problem we deal with every year. And that problem, it's just like the schools. It gets more and more challenging every year. And so the new administration, that efficiency study unfortunately wasn't going to be ready in time for this year's budget. So the administration had to find their own efficiencies and prepare for this year's budget. The efficiency study came forward. Well, some of it was things we had already figured out on our own, had done or had done something that prevented it from, we filled the position they said to leave open because we didn't have the information. And so the efficiency study, I would say from my perspective, it was quite disappointing. It did not get us the savings. The administration, the Weinberger administration had said, we want to get $3 million of efficiency out of this. And the efficiency we're getting out of this, in part because we've taken some of those already, it's not that meaningful what they're suggesting. And my feeling is also that it isn't sensitive to what's working really well in Burlington, suggesting to cut that, saying that the BCA needs to fundraise 75% of all of their costs, but then makes a recommendation to cut the person who's doing all of the fundraising, So there's this disconnect, I think, and I didn't find it very helpful. And I think the administration recognizes some of the challenge that there's some stuff that we can use in here. There's some stuff that we can look at, but we're going to have to figure out how to come up with efficiencies on our own. Looking at what we know inside of Burlington, we know that there are 18 city departments that report to the mayor, and we can all agree that is too many departments reporting to the mayor. How do you consolidate? That gets a lot more messy. And the suggestions in the efficiency study, I would say that's not how I would want to reorganize city government. And I think the new administration is looking at, we do need to consolidate this. We need fewer department heads. We need fewer departments. But how do we do that? How do we re-envision government? How do we deliver the services that our community needs and expects at a reasonable cost? And that is what is being termed Modern Gov. And it is at the very beginnings of the process. I think you could start by reading the efficiency study, because the efficiency study, even though I find it deficient, it triggers the ideas of what do we need to be looking at. It makes some suggestions about what departments would be combined. And I can tell you a lot of reasons why that's not the way I would do it. But, you know, Modern Gov gives us the opportunity to say, okay, well, no, I wouldn't do it this way, but how about this as a suggestion for how we find some efficiencies? One of the things that it suggests is that we do marketing as a citywide service that is offered. So you don't have a marketing person in each one of the 18 departments, which we don't have a marketing person in each one of the 18, but we have many. Does that work or does that not work? You know, I'm not sure about that. But those are the kind of suggestions that are being offered and the kind of things that if you read that efficiency study will kind of trigger the ideas about how can we reorganize. You know, if we don't think a centralized marketing resource for the city is a good idea, why not? And who needs the marketing resources? And, you know, how do we distribute that so we consolidate it to some extent, if not in just one unit, or maybe one is good. Maybe that is how we do it. Who did the efficiency study? You remember, Becca, the name of who did the efficiency study?
I do not off the top of my head, but if you look at the documents from our last city council meeting, I know it's right on there.
Yeah, if you go to the calendar to our last October 28th city council meeting, it'll lead you to civic clerk, and the efficiency study is in there.
Yeah, and you can search for documents. I do know it was a company based outside of Burlington, outside of Vermont.
And they didn't review the whole city. They reviewed like 7 of the 18 departments.
Thank you very much.
Good question.
Thank you. And do we have any additional questions, comments, anything for our counselors or any additional updates, counselor?
I think we probably exceeded our
Hey.
time.
No, not at all. We still get a little bit of time.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yes, so we can go ahead. We have, I think we're ahead of schedule, so this is a good thing today.
Right.
Yes, please go ahead.
Actually, if we have a little time,
we do.
have
Yep.
a question bothering me for a long time. Since we lived here for 20 years, I've seen a lot of developments, apartment developments around the city. You know, the one out toward South Burlington, Patchen Road. I don't know the name of that street. North Avenue. When these developments occur, do not the property taxes raised from these developments cover the costs that they create in city services? Is that the
Yes.
problem?
Those are dense developments, and so dense developments do have an easier time covering the costs of infrastructure than does suburban type development. And so, yeah, they have to pay impact fees, and they do cover the costs of the development.
So in other words, more development does not mean that we reduce the budget gap then?
More development does mean we reduce the budget gap because it increases our tax base. They'll cover the costs of their infrastructure and all of that, so they're not burdening the city in that way. And then they start paying taxes, a whole lot more taxes than they're paying on the vacant land. And so that increases our tax base. When City Place comes online, that should be a significant contributor. And I can't tell you that I know the nitty-gritty details of when, you know, as City Place comes online, what their taxes are going to pay and how much of the budget gap they will relieve, but they will. And yes, it all would have been worse without those developments.
All right, good. Thank you.
I'm going to add one more piece because I'm glad you asked that question, Greg. The acronym is CCORD, the South End Development something, something, something that's going right down on the Lakeside neighborhood is a great example of this, where I think this potential tax increase is being built right into the development agreement because it's a city, private city partnership. And basically, this is explaining it extremely simplistically and potentially a little bit inaccurately, but we need all these water infrastructure upgrades. And someone mentioned that earlier, they're going to be really significant costs. And essentially what this partnership is doing, it's tying the contribution of that development is basically almost, it's making it possible to do that water development without a crazy impact on the citizens' taxes because they're tying it to the development of this land with a private partnership. So they're almost like banking on the new people that are going to come and live there in order to make the numbers work for the water infrastructure project. You know, additionally, they'll be doing all this construction in the area, and so I think there's some efficiencies there as well. But I think that's a really good example of when we can really think ahead with these large developments, you can use them for a force for improvement that will go beyond just those developments. So good question.
That's a really good point. And just to kind of clarify on that point, what Becca is talking about is we have a desperate need for water and sewer upgrades, even though, yes, we passed the bonds and we did some upgrades, they were still kind of patches to a system that needs to be replaced, which is hundreds of millions of dollars. And so there is like in the South End, there's probably $60 million worth of upgrades that are needed without the project, you know, but the project can't be built unless those upgrades are made. And we have something called TIF funding that allows for taxes to be education taxes to be diverted to infrastructure improvements but for those improvements the development can't happen. We don't have a TIF district for the Secord, but that's something we are going to be asked. I think everyone's in agreement that the city should be asking the legislature for a project specific TIF district that would help us get the money for at least a big chunk of the desperately needed sewage treatment upgrades that are needed. So that need isn't created by the development, but can help pay for, but the development we can't add more development onto the existing infrastructure because it's not even sufficient for what we have now. It needs to be replaced if nothing happens.
Yeah, we went to the public meeting on this, and we're going to talk about green infrastructure a bit later. But I just have a clarification on this particular point because I was raising the question not only of the need for wastewater treatment, which I'd done the plant tour already, so I was up to speed on that. And then I go to this and I'm asking a lot of questions about this parking lot area and the drainage and what it's going to be the effect on the lake. And is there a study I can see? You know, that's what I asked. And he said, oh yeah, just go to the water department, you'll find a study. Because I'm just innocently asking really, but later on we will want to discuss this further because Diane anyway thinks that there is no such study, but whether there is or there is not, it's very important not just to worry about wastewater, but stormwater apparently is very, very serious in that particular lot. It's an extremely serious problem apparently, and we want to be involved as a neighborhood to help to alleviate runoff. We're very interested in that as our project. But, if this big project being planned right there with very serious infrastructure deficiencies for stormwater runoff as part of our, we just want to know how to research that more or find whatever resources there are on the subject.
That I can't even tell you how awesome that is. As somebody who lives on the other side of that development, and has to drive through the stormwater, has to walk through the stormwater, bike through the stormwater, has been told over and over and over again that the stormwater problem is going to be solved by X, Y, and Z project. And still, every project that has been built that is supposed to solve it does not. Sometimes it adds to it, sometimes it moves it to a different location. But it all results in us not being able to get in or out of our neighborhood. So I'm really glad that you guys who live up on the hill and are not directly impacted in terms of like day-to-day life care about this.
I mean,
But we're sending you our water.
We have, we're absolutely, we have to stop, right? But yeah, I just want to say that we would like to do this for both wards. It's absolutely essential.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I apologize. We have the next person waiting,
Okay.
but we'll quickly take
Coming
yours and
back,
then we'll get to
Darcy.
move on.
Okay, so I just wanted to know more about the private-public partnership. And if you can answer that quickly, or or we can
We can do it in ours.
okay. No, because I'm not talking about stormwater. I'm just wanting the private-public partnership.
I'll make it brief.
Yep, no worries.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Zach Nersinger. I'm from CEDO, at the city. I specifically work on this project along with many other people at the city, along with our development partners, Champlain College, and Ride Your Bike, the folks at Hula. To quickly answer, well, I'll go with a more recent question. What you're asking about is what we currently have is known as the pre-development agreement document that was executed in March of this year between the three parties that I just mentioned.
You mentioned them really quickly. I didn't get them. Are they CEDO, Ride Your Bike?
The city, Ride Your Bike, which is also known as Hula, and Champlain College. Those are the three property owners within the project area that has been identified as CCORD, South End Coordinated Redevelopment. It's a mouthful. That is our governing document right now that is getting us through a lot of the initial evaluation of the conceptual level of the project based on the zoning that was passed as the overlay district that's in place now. So that document, it's been available online since March. That is kind of like our running checklist of what we have to do and analyze and identify before we can reach and start forming what's called a development agreement, which is the next document in the process, which then once and if we reach there, then that leads into applications, development, site work, a lot of that. But in order to reach that, we have to have studies and engineering and analysis done on stormwater management, wastewater treatment, traffic analysis. A lot of things are going to go into it that, to my knowledge, are not quite yet available yet. So I don't know who pointed you to the water department. That's why I wanted to interject.
Thank you for doing that. It was the
Ride Your Bike person.
Ride Your Bike.
That explains that. City humans and
I was trying really hard.
it's all right.
Are those engineering documents?
So sorry, guys, but
Okay. Are those needs listed on your CEDO website of March 24?
The pre-development agreement that outlines the steps that we're taking right now as part of due diligence to understand what is being studied and what has to get studied if something is going to get built there.
And you're in charge of that pre-development package?
I'm working on it with a bunch of people, yes.
Okay.
Part of the team. So.
All right, guys,
Thanks,
thank you again. Appreciate that. All right, we're gonna move on to the next item. And I'm incredibly grateful to the general manager of Green Mountain Transit. For full disclosure, that's also my boss because I work at Green Mountain Transit. Thank you for your patience, and basically we're going to learn about the schedule changes and other initiatives at Green Mountain Transit. General Manager Clark, we're ready for you.
Thank you so much, Romeo. I'm trying to figure out why it won't let me turn my camera on. Are you able to hear me?
One moment.
Oh, yeah.
Just 1 second.
Yeah, it's going to let you.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Hello. Romeo, it's so good to see you. And Romeo is an outstanding employee at Green Mountain Transit and manages our downtown transit center. And so thank you so much, Romeo, for your work that you do for GMT and then your work that you do after GMT, helping your local community. And so really happy to be able to talk to you tonight. I'm sorry that parental responsibilities required me to come home instead of to be there in the room in person. So please forgive me for joining you via Zoom. And I thought that what I would like to do is kind of give a 5 to 10 minute update on a variety of issues, and then have a conversation, letting you all ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. And so if that sounds good, I'll get going. And so Green Mountain Transit, we just had our 50th anniversary. We are a municipality that was established by the state of Vermont in 1973 to provide urban public transit. And so we did that until about 2004, when some of the rural transit agencies in the state were experiencing some financial difficulties, and GMT was in a good position at that time to take on more responsibility, and so we became one of the very rare urban and rural transit agencies in the country, and so that meant that we went from being CCTA, which just provided sort of the city local service, to becoming GMT, which operates in Chittenden County, Franklin County, Washington County, and then supports transit in Grand Isle County and runs some seasonal service in Lamoille County. And so I like to start off with the fact that we're a municipality, just to, especially with groups like this, because, you know, GMT is run by a group of local dedicated volunteers that are on our board of commissioners, and they're who I report to. And so what's nice is that, you know, we're local government responding to a local board, and you know, we don't have a profit motive. We're not, you know, when we provide our service, we're just looking to break even and to provide as much as we can for the communities we serve. And so thinking about our urban service, the service that operates in and around Burlington costs about $20 million a year to operate. And the reason why I bring that up is because I want to express appreciation to the city of Burlington, because about just under $2 million a year comes from the city of Burlington. So almost 10% of our operating revenue comes from the city of Burlington. We get another $2 million from other municipalities in our local service area that are also members of GMT. We get about 2.6 million in state dollars from VTrans, about 2 million in fares, and then the rest is made up by the federal government. And so public transit in our country is heavily subsidized by the federal government, thankfully. And so thinking about what is currently happening, one of the things, there's two big items that are on GMT's plate right now. One of those is we're looking at some service reductions. And the other is that we are trying to figure out if we should continue to be both a rural and urban provider. And so let's talk about the service reductions first. So we're in a situation where we have to contemplate service reductions because our budget for next year, for fiscal year 26, we have a $2 million gap. And so as we just heard from one of the other speakers earlier about municipal funding, it seems like there's always a gap. and so GMT has one. And we were very lucky that one of the few good things that came out of the pandemic was COVID relief funds. And so GMT received some COVID relief funds. And so this meant that when all of those inflationary pressures that you all were have probably heard about with labor costs and with fuel costs and with other items, we've been able to kind of absorb those increases because we received these federal dollars. And so what we had is that, you know, our costs have been rising very steeply. Our normal revenue was rising, but not as steeply. And we would use those relief funds to fill the gap. And so the problem with one-time relief funds is that they, you know, eventually that they run out. And so when our relief funds run out in the next year, that's what's going to create this gap. And so we went to the legislature this past session. We talked to them about our financial situation, and what we heard from them at that time was that they really wanted GMT to essentially learn to live within our existing revenue streams. And so, so in order to do that, you know, we have to look at our service. And GMT operates very lean. Our indirect rate, which is the percentage of the amount of money that we spend on non-operational matters like my salary and like the salary of the other managerial and administrative staff, it's only 6.5%. And so that means that the vast bulk of our spending is in operational areas, which is why when we need to save money, unfortunately, service is the thing that we have to look at. And so in August, we put out a plan that would potentially save up to $3 million. We wanted the plan to identify potential savings that would be more than our gap, just because we wanted to make sure that we would have some choices for our board and some choices so that when we would hear community feedback, that we would be able to, you know, that it wasn't just a single slate that we expected our board to stick to. And so we had 9 public meetings where we got feedback from the community on those potential service reductions. And I have to say those public meetings really reminded me of the importance that transit has to so many of the different things that we as a community and as a state value. And you know, it's more than just a service that, you know, gets people to work, which is critical, but it gets people to their medical appointments. It gets people to their human services appointments. People pick where they live based on access to transit. And of course, there's the whole climate mitigation and congestion mitigation. And so during the public meetings, we really heard a lot of sort of broad feedback on the impact that would happen if we reduce service. The where that's really good news is that there were also legislators who are at these public meetings, and so unlike last year when we were at the State House and we kind of were told to live within our means. You know, we're hearing from legislators now from committees outside of transportation, such as members of the healthcare committee, who are like, gee, I'm really worried about how the people that we're trying to serve in healthcare are going to be impacted by this. And people on the economic development committee are interested. And so I'm seeing that, you know, it's going to be interesting when we get back to the State House this year, because I think that there's going to be probably a broader coalition of folks who have an interest in this. I will tell you that there have been some reductions that the board has already approved, and but the bulk of our reductions are going to be considered this January and February. The good news for Ward 6 is that your ward is actually bordered by two of our highest ridership routes. And so we have the number one route that connects Burlington to Williston that goes up Main Street. And we have the number two route, which goes from downtown Burlington to Essex Junction that goes up Pearl Street. And because those routes are where we move the most people, each of those routes move almost 500,000, provides almost 500,000 rides a year. We're not really imagining a whole lot of, or really any service reductions on those two main lines. I think that there's the potential that there may be a reduction in some Saturday evening service on those, but that would be it. We do know that we need to make some modifications to the number 11, and the number 11 goes from the downtown transit center up College Street and then to South Burlington. But the underperforming portions of that route are actually in South Burlington. And so I think that we are likely to change that route. I don't think that we'll eliminate it. Yeah, but the portion that I suspect would remain the same would be that College Street portion. And so even though service reductions are obviously not something that we want, at least for Ward 6, I think that you all are going to be in pretty good shape as far as the service that that you all are currently receiving. And then I'm just going to jump to the rural question and then stop talking at you and start talking with you, because I would much rather hear your questions and respond to the concerns in the room. And so thinking about whether GMT should consider to be an urban or urban and rural, or if we should kind of go back to our urban roots. One of the things that's been really positive is that the rural transit agencies, which were really suffering financially in the early 2000s, have really rebounded as a whole. And there are other providers now that would be able to do that service quite capably. And so the state of Vermont is considering the transfer because with our service sort of tied to urban, the urban area, that means our pay tends to be higher than the other providers tends to be, and so there would potentially be some cost savings that would happen if our service were to be transferred to other folks. One of the things that I am aware of is that our staff is sized about the size of a normal small transit agency that was just doing like an urban network. And so the fact that we're doing both an urban and a rural network is with the staff that our size is really, problematic for us. And to give you a little bit of an idea of why this is challenging is that the federal government, through the Federal Transit Administration, funds urban transit and rural transit through separate programs. And the programs have separate rules, and the funds cannot be mixed. And so what that means is that GMT is really like two transit agencies that's managed by a single management team. And so as you can imagine, that just puts a lot of pressure on that small management team. And so this is why we're considering sort of coming back to our urban roots. And but of course, before we do that, we want to make sure that our employees are going to be in good hands. We want to make sure that the communities that we serve are going to be in good hands. But I just wanted to let you know that that's like really something that could change who GMT is. And just wanted you aware that those conversations are going on. And so happy now to turn it over to you all. And like I said, I'll answer questions to the best of my ability. and happy to expand on any of the areas of interest.
Thank you so much, like Clark. Questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Greg Eplerwood. I live on South Union, and you didn't mention Route 6. I don't have a couple of other comments as well.
Yep. And so Route 6 is going to be having some reductions on Saturday service that would start in December, and that would be Saturday evening service. And I think that there's the possibility that we may see next year in June a reduction in the frequency of Saturday service on 6. But 6 is one of our main trunk routes that moves a lot of people. And so I don't see that changing significantly either.
And if I may, yeah. One comment, thank you, in gratitude. I was up on UVM campus and I witnessed a bus driver plowing through a crosswalk while students were still in it, blowing a horn. And I reported it, online report, and within a day, I got a response asking me to clarify and confirm what I said, what I saw. And I got an email back almost immediately saying we are taking care of it. So thank you very much. That shows very good management on your part.
All right, thank you. And not to get into the like the details of personnel confidentiality. We've already had our disciplinary hearing on that. We've already issued our findings because that very much concerned us. And certainly people, we know that there's a lot of people who are crossing the crosswalk along all around the university, and having one of our drivers who, and talking with him, I know that there wasn't an intention to be potentially harmful, but we have to take responsibility. Our drivers are professionals, and when we're approaching a crosswalk, even if in that particular situation there was a box truck coming in the other direction, when you watch the video, because all of our buses have cameras. And so you can see that there was a box truck coming from the other direction that sort of blocked sight of the crosswalk, but we should have anticipated that somebody could be walking along after there. And so thank you for making for contacting us. That's how we know how to improve, and for the opportunity to make our service better. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, you're quite welcome, and thank you. And then my question is, you've been mentioning operating costs. Well, what about capital? Are you seeing any ways to save money in capital? I know changing to EV is pretty expensive, but that means less maintenance. I know that making perhaps using smaller buses on smaller routes is probably not efficient either. I heard that the smaller buses may cost more than the big buses to replace. But anyway, those are my questions. That's my question.
Absolutely. So the in transit, operating funds and capital funds are also sort of isolated and separated. And so the good news is that where the federal government provides us with 50 to 60% of our operating costs, they provide us 80 to 90% of our capital costs. And so like when you think about, for example, we just got some new electric buses in. Those were subsidized 90% by the federal government. And then the remaining costs were split between B-Trans and GMT. And so what that means is that even though that electric bus, which costs, $1.1 million, I can't believe that, a single vehicle, costs that much. And it costs about twice as much as our diesel buses. But because of that heavy subsidy, the cost of GMT for that new bus is actually the same as if we had purchased a diesel. And I can tell you that I wish that we had the flexibility to use capital funds in operating, because I probably would, prioritize service over, new buses. But we're not allowed to do that. And I do know that we're going to be having more electric buses showing up. We'll have about 40% of our fleet. Oh, wait a second, let me know the math's not right. So 24 out of our 70 buses will be electric buses by the time we are done with our current electric bus order, which spans like 4 years. And I'm really happy to report that the newer buses are operating much better than our first electric battery buses. Our first electric battery buses, really underperformed, unfortunately. They were in the shop constantly. In fact, they like both of them right now are inoperable and may be for quite some time. In fact, the manufacturer of those buses, went bankrupt. And so, but as the technology has matured, the reliability of them has become better. We're still finding that the maintenance hasn't been much less than our diesel buses, but we're hoping long term that will be less so.
So I have a question and a comment.
I feel like there was a second question that I forgot about. No. And okay, all right.
So the comment is that the buses that are painted black with the advertising all over them from Vermont Construction don't look like city buses, don't look like GMT buses, and you can miss the bus because you think it's a tourist bus. So, oh yeah. So there's a problem with graphics that take away from the blue. If you have graphics on the blue ones and all the buses are blue, that that's the right bus. When it's a black bus going by and you're on Shelburne Road, you just think it's another transportation thing, a leaf peeping bus. So that's my comment. Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I haven't heard that before, but it makes absolute sense that
because you don't even see GMT on them.
Right. And let me bring that back to our folks. I mean, I can tell you that one of the things that our advertising revenue is just about our only revenue other than fares that isn't coming from other government. And so
but there might be a happy hybrid in there, right?
Exactly. I'm sure that we can find something that makes it clear that it's still one of our buses.
And you're advertising to the cars that see the bus. You could put the advertising inside the bus, like subways have the advertising inside the bus. No, never mind. So that was the comment. And then the question is, what happens to the buses back and forth to the airport?
So if the number 11 were to be changed, we would need to figure out another way to get people to the airport, because right now that's the way. One of the things that we're potentially looking at is having the number 1, which goes down Williston Road and pretty close to the airport already, having some of those runs, probably not all, but some of those runs deviate to the airport. And we think that would actually, perhaps provide better connectivity to the airport than the 11.
Any more questions or? All right. Thank you so much, Clayton Clark. We appreciate your time.
Romeo, thank you so much. I appreciate all that you do for our community. Thank you, everybody, for being there and active. I know that this is a hard week for many people, and the fact that we are still working is hopeful to me. So thank you all for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, and we'll go to the green infrastructure with Megan.
And Diane.
Diane, sorry.
No, it was, I moved for that. I actually moved myself. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, really. Hello, everyone. I'm Megan Epler-Wood, and I'm here with Diane Geyer and Nancy Harkin, and the three of us are on this newly formed and still morphing into shape Green Infrastructure Committee. It began with a little bit about the concerns on the Champlain Parkway runoff and the wonderful article that Diane Geyer wrote about that in the 05401 Journal. If you haven't seen it, it's excellent. And then I read that and I started we put in a rain garden and have been thinking ourselves about our own property. And then we started thinking, let's work together, because it appears as if with the increasing amount of rain that we are getting, obviously, especially in the summer season, that this is not going to get better. It's not a temporary situation. And we previously I brought stats with me previously of the amount of rain, additional rain we're going to see. But it's I think we all know we're going to expect an increasing amount of stormwater runoff. And as you were just hearing, that is really going to be a problem, especially down in the Pine Street corridor. But our whole Hill Street section basically is, going to feed into that. And so our thought as a committee, and I'm going to have Diane say a few things, I'm just giving the intro, and is that we wanted to be active in a way that would involve the community and let us all do things together as much as possible, or look at good examples or bad examples. And so what they're already doing, of course, with the wastewater treatment tours, very much on our page. I did it. I spoke with Megan Moir. We're certainly planning on incorporating more of her, their input, and we've met with the water department in general to talk about how we can work together. So I would say it's coming together in an extremely positive way. So we want to continue on that front, working with the NPA as well. And because we think that, being a little bit more proactive within the NPA will hopefully attract more people who want to learn about this problem and in one way or another act upon it, even if it's just in small ways. We can't all, but it can help our neighborhood, and it will certainly help in safety and with access to people's properties down near, and with developments, with larger developments. Of course, we have to realize that if we aren't doing a more careful review of whatever studies are done at the community level, they're just going to go forward with what they have. And we're saying we don't want that, that we think we need to look at, as a community, at how those studies are done. Okay, so that's very important. I think we have a lot of expertise here, and so we're going to talk about a series of actions that we'd like to take. They're very much in draft form, and then we'll take a look at what you think. My ideas so far, which are not still in formation, is to make some short videos on the various hot spots where we really can see the problem already occurring, and then have some experts going out and taking a look with us in short interview form, so that we can put that on file on YouTube or some kind of publicly available place under Green Infrastructure Burlington. Maybe we can work with the library even on that. That'd be cool. I had never thought of that. But so I'm going to work on that to try and put together these short videos in the next few months. I'm still looking for candidates, and I do speak out to the community on this. Anyone could make these short videos with our assistance. Greg and I were both film producers and even worked for PBS back in the day. So we'd love to recruit a young person or more who would be interested in doing these videos with us. It's just a question of getting out with a cell phone and, taking some shots and putting some titles on. It really wouldn't be a lot. So we're looking for that kind of involvement at the youth level as well. And then we are also looking at doing a CCTV program on the topic, and Diane can talk more about that, and some spring walks looking at green infrastructure. So that's as far as we've gotten, and Diane has some further comments, and I think Nancy does too.
So just to back up a little bit, the water that comes down through Ward 6 starts at UVM, and UVM has 6 watersheds. We're one of the watersheds, and it's basically Anglesby Brook in terms of coming off the golf course. And that's the most degraded stream that comes into Lake Champlain in Burlington. The next one that's worse is Potash Brook that goes into South Burlington at Red Rocks. So the amount of discharge flowing across our land from all of our super storms that we've been having and all of the watershed that both infiltrates the grates that we have in our neighborhoods, as well as comes out of some of those grates, is part of the conversation that we're starting to look at and work on. And that leads to maybe in January having a hands-on with pizza meeting to talk about those kinds of things, and even people bringing their quote pet peeves about water in their streets, and we can start to map that as a NPA. And so all of that leads to why all the water that lands on Pine Street is critical, and it's all coming off South Park too, and that's the barge canal. And Ruby and Andy have been doing a lot of protection of the barge canal, and they're going to join us in December for a small, I think, conversation about that, amongst other things that are happening in December. So it's sort of starting to break open this conversation about stormwater and superstorms charges and our own wastewater issues, because it's all connected. From the hands-on to the big picture, which maybe is more like the C-Corps project, the hands-on being some rainwater gardens in the spring that you can visit, the ones the city's done or that individuals like Megan and Greg have done to inspire people for spring. So we're sort of strategically looking at it at both a direct action neighborhood projects, as well as the bigger picture of how we, because people have different skill levels and of how they want to get involved. So look for more in December, January, February, May. It will be a moving target. Yes.
I have a question for you. Are you aware of the restoration plan for the Anglesbury Brook restoration plan that the state requires on stormwater permits?
Yes.
So no, it's Anglesby. There's actually a state requirement, and there's like 20 different sites in Burlington that are required to upgrade their stormwater. It's actually, the designs are due in 2025, and you have to complete them by 2027. And my neighborhood is one of them, and I live at Overlake condos. So there's actually, I don't know if Megan told you about that. So yeah, I can send you the report if you'd like it.
I think I looked at it, but it didn't. Anyway.
I have one more comment too.
Yeah.
Just before Nancy, you have some things too. Yeah, just to these points about us all, of course, learning about these different restoration projects or ways of looking at runoff off of the hill section down to Pine in that area, I think is very much for us as a community important that we can get caught up a little bit in all the particularities of the specific projects, right? But I just want to point out and remind everyone that we are one big neighborhood, despite what wards we're in, and that we're all in this watershed together. And that when I even saw the presentation yesterday for the Sears Lane piece, I felt that people weren't knowing, they just didn't know that as part of the presentation. They're being asked to like vote on which apartment style they like for that, that property, literally with green and red and yellow, but they're not seeing maps that show a holistic view of how runoff comes off of our hill, and just thinking about, well, what kind of property design do I want? But in our observation, we need to look at the green infrastructure design of properties like that, because otherwise they're just going to even provide more runoff. So I think, I just wanted to have that holistic moment with you, because ultimately we do think we will involve, we are working with the Seawater Sea Grant group as well up at UVM, and they have students. And so we're also trying to involve graduate students. Thanks.
Yeah, you brought up the neighborhood code indirectly, right. and that goes to an old conversation that Jonah and I have had, and maybe but there's nothing about stormwater in the neighborhood code and so that's a critical concern. that we need to address.
So, thank you, Megan and Diane. I'll just wrap it up and say in December, we will have Friends of the Barge Canal here giving us an update. We're also going to have DPW giving us an update on the bond issue for the wastewater treatment plant, which we'll be voting on in March. So those are two very critical topics that we need to know more about. And we are planning ahead for a meeting, like Diane mentioned, that will be more interactive, where people can provide input on issues that they're seeing related to these.
Do you have a question? Anybody have comments or questions?
Champlain will be happy to do some part of your video series and showing off our stormwater infrastructure that we have, because our Perry Hall property got the first ever non-residential blue certification for watershed, with permeable pavers and stormwater detention tanks and overflow ponds that never overflow because that does such a great job. So happy to walk around and show you that stuff.
Great.
Sorry, I just have a tick that I can't not react to when we bring up the South End coordinated project. You said that no one's really thinking about stormwater, or it didn't appear so at the meetings. That wasn't a question that was being asked.
Wasn't presented.
Correct. That wasn't really a topic that was going to come up at that stage because we are early on in the process. However, when we look at what the overlay district requires on top of just regular zoning, green infrastructure, stormwater management, very sustainable development is the goal and a requirement for all those involved. So it's very much on our board, and it's going to be incorporated throughout every element of what will take place there. So it's not cheap to do it. None of it's cheap, but it is a requirement. And throughout the process, we'll continue to invite people to share their thoughts on it. You know, the whole thing is a public process. So when you do have comments or thoughts or questions about infrastructure items like that, green infrastructure, sustainable design, you're welcome to submit those to CEDO, the Office of City Planning, Department of Public Works. We're all involved in this. So it is very much on our minds. And even if it doesn't come through in some of those boards, because we are trying to figure out what it's going to look like right now, and what we can design. I'm shaking her head. Okay. That's what we're trying to do right now. Is there still a question, or did I?
Well, I've been to two of these processes now. The other was Memorial, which, you know, I'm also at work with Becca and try to advise and report to her when I look at these efforts to bring in our comments. And I guess I'm trying to think how to put it, but I think that in the case of the one last night, as I said, it's isolating issues without giving the public enough background.
That's helpful.
So that I think that for future, maybe, I mean, I'm happy to work with Becca or whoever it could be helpful on this. But to get the holistic picture for both of those in front of the public would be very important before you start asking their opinions on designs of apartment buildings. Because I saw the young people really, I mean, you know how serious it is for them to have the apartments, built. And so what I saw was like, I just want this one here, but of course, they can't be thinking about the fact that there's actually no proper stormwater plan for this, at least in front of them yet. So it might have been putting the cart before the horse would be my comment.
Thank you.
Okay. Great discussion. And unless there's anything further, I think we're ready to.
I'm sorry. Can I just ask one really quick question about the presentation that Megan was talking about? And I'm sorry, the city staff person from CEDO, I didn't catch your name. It's a little hard to hear from Zoom.
My name is Zach Nersinger.
Zach. Okay. Thanks, Zach. It's been really helpful to have you here. I was just wondering if you could point us all in the direction of where to see the presentation that was given last night. I'm I think the C-Cord is really, is that how you say it? SEC? Yeah.
For now,
Is
that's
it
the
really?
current acronym.
Okay. It's an amazing project and I want to stay up to date on it. And I think it's really exciting. So I was just curious to look at that because I didn't realize we were at the point of showing things like rendering. So I'm on the website, but I don't see like a document here. Anyway.
Yep. So currently we're hosting all of it through the CEDO website. It's in the economic development portion of our website. It's one of the little bouncing circle icons in the new fabulous layout that we have. And in there, you'll find South End Coordinated Redevelopment as its own dedicated page where we have some information about the current pre-development agreement that I mentioned earlier. And then at the bottom of the page, you'll see something called a document library.
Oh, I
where,
see that. Okay.
Yep. And in there, we will be uploading the boards that were presented at yesterday's open house event, which again was like an open house format, very fluid, let people kind of have a self-guided tour of the information that was being presented to interact with those boards. We're collecting that feedback from yesterday and we're going to be presenting that online once it's all come together. So that's the page that you might be looking at right now is probably where it'll be landing. And be sharing out that information through various online resources that we have, and we'll be also opening up another online survey to continue capturing some of that feedback that was offered at yesterday's open house to keep those thoughts going.
Great. Thank you so much. You guys are really doing a great job on this project. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
A lot more to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great discussion tonight. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Good night.